So you finally, you got a little opportunity to have a little bit of beef somewhere along that travel and travails and stuff. You're still plugging along.
Yes. Like one night, I was kind of we were kind of early getting into this one forest, and I got to the edge of the forest area, and there was a farm area with a wagon full of potatoes. And I got as many potatoes in my jacket that I could get, take back to my buddies. I unloaded the potatoes and went back to the wagon, and by the time I got to the wagon there was a guard sitting on top of the potatoes, so we didn't get any more potatoes.
Okay.
One night we stayed in this one place. It was kind of I'd call it a pretty fancy farm, a large one. There were several residences there and a lot of fancy farm buildings, like barns and different sizes of barns and other stuff that fit into a farm operation. I think all of the guys got to sleep inside a building that night. When we got up in the morning, no guards were there. Guards were all gone. We didn't know where they were and didn't understand that.
Okay.
And it was within an hour or so, there was a couple of British Land Rovers come roaring through there at about 50 miles an hour. It seemed like maybe they were going 100, you know. They were going as fast as they could. There were 3 guys on each Land Rover. There was a driver and a guy sitting beside him who was probably in charge, and there was a guy in the back that had a mounted machine gun that he could use anytime he wanted to.
Okay.
There were 2 of those things that went through, and we kind of looked at each other and we decided that we were liberated, because those were British troops from there. And it wasn't very long before American GI trucks started coming through. At first they were carrying supplies like food. We didn't know what was in there, but they were full of something.
Okay.
There was one of them that apparently thought he saw prisoners of war there, and he stopped his trucks on the side, and he said that all he had in his truck was grapefruit juice. We could have all the grapefruit juice we wanted. We weren't looking for grapefruit juice too much, but yeah. So I didn't get any grapefruit juice, and some of them did, I guess. So he went on his way, and then it was followed. That took for an hour, I guess. They were coming through like that. Then there was a long time where we had American trucks coming through hauling what I was the airman, as an airman would call 105 howitzers. I didn't know that they were American guns, I think.
Okay.
They might have been English, I don't know, but they were American trucks and American drivers.
Okay.
And I didn't know that the American Army had so many 105s. Yeah. But I do know that they would stop and bomb a city or a town all night long, and then the next day they'd have the tanks go in and capture that town.
Okay.
And before they went to the next big town.
Did you watch that during that time period while y'all were kind of along the road?
No, but I knew what they were doing.
Okay, you knew that was their mission. Okay.
I knew that we had a lot of big guns that were doing that, okay. Yeah. And we could hear them do that at night when we were still in the prison camp.
Okay.
Anyhow, we decided we were liberated. And pretty soon the people started walking on the road. They were walking on both sides. Everybody wanted to go someplace else, and they were all carrying their personal belongings that they were treasured enough that they didn't want to leave behind,
Okay.
because they were not coming back home again, whatever that was.
These are the civilians that are evacuating also?
Yes,
On the roads?
from any place.
Okay.
They were just going someplace else.
Okay.
Civilians. And there would be, some of them would be German soldiers too.
Were they without their weapons? Or were they still carrying weapons?
Some with and some without.
Okay. But basically,
So most of
would you
us
consider them deserters in a sense? Because in other words, they weren't.
We didn't have any idea. All we knew is they were.
Okay.
If we wanted to get back to where we wanted to go, we'd probably go that way. So.
Okay, where the direction of where the trucks are coming. The American trucks were coming.
Yeah.
All right, go that direction. That's probably.
So we walked down there.
Because nobody stopped and told you they're doing a tactical withdrawal.
That's right.
They were advancing, so you want to go back.
We didn't go as a big group. We just, there were three of us together.
Right. Yeah.
And so the three of us were going, and some of the others were going too, you know. And we'd get down to a crossroads. We got down to a crossroad, and there was I think was probably a British soldier at the crossroad that would stop everybody and find out what they wanted, where they were, who they were, and where they were going as best he could, you know.
Okay.
He wasn't holding up the civilians, is what I'm saying. If the Germans were carrying guns, he told them to put the guns in a pile over there, and there it was. When he saw us, recognized us as prisoners of war, they told us we could have any of those guns we wanted to take home as a souvenir. And I didn't bring any home because I looked at them and decided that was just something I had to carry, and I was done carrying stuff. There was one other thing that it got into a crossroad. It might not have been the first one, but there were some people there that were delousing anybody that went through the crossroad. They would pull up the shirt, give them a squirt of dust down there, and tell them to go ahead, you know. It was just delousing, I think, because we got it one and like anybody else. We got into a large city, and I'm not too sure what it was. I thought it was one place looking at a map, and later decided it wasn't. It was probably Hanover, but I didn't know that. The three of us stayed in a very large apartment house. It was an old brick or stone building, you know, like a well-built. There was no cheapie. I think it was probably 3 stories high. We just went in, and there was nobody else in there. We did find out, we stayed there for several days, and we did find out that there was a woman and a young girl that were living in the basement, and we kind of communicated with her in such a way that she understood we weren't there to harm her in any way. So we didn't see much of her. She kept out of our way, and we kept out of hers. So we found that we're not too far away from an American anti-aircraft group that was sent in there to this city, and we found out that we could get something to eat there, so we went and ate in their mess meal, and it was all full of other POWs too. Germany was full of POWs, especially Americans from the Air Force. There were thousands of them. And we ate there for a while, and pretty soon there were a lot of POWs working there, and I think it was a mess officer come over one time while we were eating, and he said he couldn't afford to feed us anymore because he didn't get the rations for that. So he was moving us, putting us in trucks and moving us down to where the POW collection point was. And so that's where we were taken by a truck. And so we had an organized retrieval of prisoners of war is what it was.
Okay, turned out pretty good for...
And there's a name for that. That was an air base, German air base that was taken over. And I'm trying to remember the name of that right now. I can't do it. But they put us into groups of just enough people to fill up an airplane. And we were told that Eisenhower had promised prisoners of war that they would be flown out of Germany.
Okay.
And he intended to fly them out of Germany. So okay. Here we were. So we were in groups that just fit into one of the planes. It was what do they call them? The DC-3s.
Okay, the Goonie Birds?
Hmm?
Goonie Birds? C-47?
C-47s,
Goonie
yeah.
Bird, yeah.
And when it came turn for our group, well, we all got on that airplane, and they flew us into a town called Nancy in France.
Okay.
And at Nancy we got some new clothes. Before that we kept the clothes that we had, but we could shower in this one place.
Okay.
At Nancy we got new clothes, and we were put in back on a truck and taken to up by Le Havre. They were setting up a tent city for returning soldiers, where they would gather them together and get them in boatload sizes, shipload sizes, and put them on ships.
Is that Camp Lucky Strike?
We were in Lucky Strike. There was another one that eventually got built up there too. But when we were in Lucky Strike,
okay.
I was put in charge of a tent because they found out I was a tech sergeant, and then I ought to be in command of that tent. And my job was to see that they were there when it was time to put that tent load of people on a boat.
Okay.
And I remember there was one guy that decided, to hell with all that. He says, I'm going to go to Paris. Never been to Paris, and I'm going to go to Paris. So he went to Paris. I said, I don't care where you go, but you ought to be here when we get on the boat. I don't know how he knew about when the boatload was going to be taken from the tent city and put on the boat, but he came the day before, back from Paris. He said he had enough of that. I was sick at that time, and what I had was yellow jaundice, but I didn't know that.
Okay.
They call it hepatitis now.
Yeah.
And I guess the doctors called it hepatitis, but the ordinary people like us called it yellow jaundice.
Yellow jaundice.
I remember going into the mess line one time, because that's how we ate.
Now, were the NCOs and officers, were they all segregated there also? Did the
Americans... people in my tent were all enlisted men.
Okay, all enlisted.
I suspect the officers were separated out, but I don't know what happened to the officers.
Okay, but I mean, did you ever see any of the officers in your tent compound section at all? No? Okay.
So we were one time in this mess line, there were a bunch of officers come up and stopping. And I think there must have been a half a dozen of them. Lo and behold, one of them was Eisenhower. He'd stop and talk to somebody every once in a while, and he'd walk up another 5 or 10, and stop. He stopped and talked to